want to tell you, I find it so inspiring to see so many people here today at this conference, ending violence together. One of the things that I think is important, and actually the first step in success, is people joining together and learning. And that's what we're all doing today, because we know we all can be a part of the solution together. We are coming together because we know that together we can make a difference, and we recognize that by learning that we can all be a part of the solution. I also think the second step is taking what you've learned and putting it into action. And I challenge all of you to take what you learned today in this conference and put it into action by looking for ways that you can work together to end violence with partnerships, with collaborations. No agency, no person can do it alone. It takes all of us working together. And I know in this great community that we have, we can do this. I'd like to present Gaal from the prosecutor's office. We have been working together and partnering together in such wonderful ways, and I appreciate this collaboration that we have. And I'm going to allow him to share some information about some of the work that we've been doing and he's been doing in the community, working together to end violence.
Thanks, Deborah. I'm Chris Gaal, and Debra Morrow and I met last summer to have a brainstorming session where we tried to come up with every idea that we could think of to explore ways to work together better to address domestic violence and sexual violence in our community. And we came up with a list. And at the top of that list was improving our community response to strangulation. We both understood what a serious issue that was and what a challenge it is to effectively respond to. And we were also both aware of promising new best practices that had emerged around the country that have made a big difference in improving the response to strangulation. So we worked together organizing a training for first responders and law enforcement, healthcare, victim advocates, and others, a multidisciplinary community training where we learn about these new techniques side by side. And we brought in a leading national expert, Kelsey McKay, and we explained why we should start doing things differently. We built a community consensus, and we got buy-in. We formed a working group with representatives from each of the stakeholders. Each law enforcement agency was on that task force, agreed to implement those ideas and to use a detailed new checklist form for investigating strangulation cases so that evidence that was not understood or missed before would now be gathered and documented. And we created our own local version of that form, and next week we're having a follow-up training with Kelsey McKay to train officers on how to use that new form in their investigations. And we're confident that just as those new best practices have made a big difference in other places where they've been implemented, that they'll make a big difference here too. But here's the point. This shows what we can do when we work together in a positive community collaboration. And that is the theme of this conference, ending violence together. That's not just a slogan. That's a real aspiration, a goal, and a mission statement. And it's not easy. It's much easier to point the finger and place blame. What's hard is true collaboration, because true collaboration requires us to sometimes put aside our own organizational interests, take risks, open ourselves up to criticism in the hope that we can find a way to improve upon the status quo and take things to the next level. Accomplish something together that we could not have done individually. There's a quote that sums this up. Quote, "True collaboration is not just about gluing together existing egos. It's about the ideas that never existed until after everyone entered the room." To which, quote, I would add, "and everyone's voice was heard." And sometimes it's easier to learn about collaboration from the example or the experience of actually doing it rather than from just talking about it as a concept. Also on our list from that meeting was the idea of a joint public awareness campaign on domestic violence, not just to raise awareness about that topic, but to demonstrate that we were working together, that the prosecutor's office and Middle Way were attempting to model a positive, collaborative working relationship for the community. And so that's what we did. We created this poster, which you may have seen. We sent it out all over the community. And it's not just about the message of encouraging victims and bystanders to come forward and get help with domestic violence. It's also about letting the community know that we're working together in different ways, playing different roles, but toward the same end, breaking the cycle of domestic violence and stopping it in our community. Because both Debra and I agree that's what we need. What will help us take our efforts to the next level is a more positive spirit of collaboration, and that will allow us to creatively address the issues that we face as a community. Here's another example, a story that needs to be told. In February of this year, I had a trial in a very serious rape case with 2 victims and 2 perpetrators. Those victims went to the hospital and had separate sexual assault forensic medical exams with 2 different nurses at the same time. And then those nurses came into court and they testified and they explained to the jury about how they conducted those exams, documented the sexual acts that those young women were subjected to, documented the injuries, explained how they conducted their forensic evidence collection, where they swabbed for DNA, how those swabs were then labeled and packaged up in the evidence collection kit, how they maintained the chain of custody. Those nurses dotted every I and crossed every T flawlessly. And those samples were sent to the state crime lab and tested, and that evidence made a significant difference in the case. You might say, well, that's great. That's exactly what should happen. Of course, if you've been the victim of rape, you should be able to go to the hospital and get a free forensic medical exam by a certified SANE nurse. This is a major university with nearly 50,000 students where sexual assault is an important issue of concern. But that SANE program didn't even exist 10 years ago. We had one nurse who paid for the training out of her own pocket because she was so stressed about being asked to do these rape exams and not knowing if she was doing it right because she'd never got any training. Now we have a SANE program at the hospital with 24/7 coverage where 2 victims could come in at the same time, and there were 2 different certified SANE nurses able to do those exams simultaneously and then come into court and testify so perfectly. That is not something that we should take for granted. It took us working together. It took a positive community collaboration. The prosecutor's office, law enforcement, the hospital, Middle Way, inventing, negotiating, pushing to create that program. And then we built on that idea with Susie's Place and expanded it into a pediatric version to address child sexual abuse cases. And now we have a vibrant and functioning sexual assault response team that meets regularly and keeps making improvements to the process. That all shows what we can do when we work together as a community. It's easy to say the word collaborate, but sometimes it's more instructive to learn from the example when we try and actually do it. Finally, I want to mention the Nurse Family Partnership Program, which is something that we've been struggling to bring to this community for many years now. We understood it was a good idea. We built the community consensus of support, but we didn't have the way. We didn't have the funding. After years of trying, IU Community Health finally got a grant, and they just held a grand opening reception. If you don't know about this program yet, then you should. The Nurse Family Partnership pairs a first-time mother living in poverty with a free home visiting nurse from pregnancy through the first 2 years of a child's life. Decades of research
shows how this evidence-based program results in a broad range of benefits, and those benefits last well into the later years of life and positively influence the child, the mother, and indeed the whole community. But here's what I love most about this program. Not only does it achieve amazing results, it takes a step in a different direction toward meeting human needs, such as healthcare, education, and economic stability. But even more than that, it shows us that there is a different direction that exists. That's what true community collaboration can do. It can show us something new that we didn't even know existed. It can help us break out of the status quo, create something new, and take it to the next level. That's my hope for the future, and I thank Debra Morrow and her leadership at Middleway House for being a partner on that journey. And thank you for your interest in working with us today.
I want to thank you, Chris, and I hope you're all inspired by the ways that these collaborations and partnerships can work and how our community can all work together to end violence. I want to, first off, before I thank all our sponsors, I would like to thank all of you for being here. So